Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. We got a great show for you today, talking about the environment and how the environment affects our thinking and feeling about life and how we could grow and utilize our environment. But Danielle's going to talk about it in a minute. You are listening to Mental Health Matters with Dr. Scott Terry, and we will talk about areas that allow you to explore who you are and what makes you tick and what allows you to grow. We're not here to give you answers. We're not here to tell you what's right or wrong. That's for you to come up with. We're just here to stimulate your thinking and feeling and move forward in life. You are listening to KRUU 100.1 on your FM dial. The shows are archived on KRUU, and they are also archived, including a fantastic performance yesterday from the Hope for Life organization, an organization through the Fairfield Mental Health Alliance, on the YouTube channel, if anybody's interested. Not promoting it, just saying if you're interested in wanting to see that, we're going to be posting that up there really soon, including a number of these shows and a number of other lectures. The event last night was a concert and performance, beautiful performances, but also dealing with the issue of suicide prevention and the notion of hope. Fantastic. Anyways, so if you're interested in that, check it out. If you're interested in some of the old shows, check it out. And if you're interested in emailing us regarding any topics or interest, probably easier just to email me directly, scott@ardentcenter.com. That's Scott, S-C-O-T-T, at ARDENTCENTER.com. And if I don't respond, it probably means I didn't get it. Anyways, so Kyle, tell us about yourself.
I am a undergraduate intern of Dr. Scott Terry, and I'm living here in Fairfield, and I enjoy playing music.
And you're really good.
Thank you. And I have my bachelor's in psychology.
And you are soon going for your master's and doctorate.
Yes.
Okay. And Danielle.
Hello. My name is Danielle McWilliams. I'm a graduate intern of Dr. Scott Terry, and I'm very excited to be here today.
And we're excited to have you. So, Danielle, tell us a little bit more about today's topic.
So today we're going to be talking about basically nature and the environment and its impact on our mental health. A friend of mine had sent me an article, it had to do with, it was a research study that Stanford had done, and it had to do with basically nature and hiking, going for hikes and walks, and how it improves mental health, how it can improve depression, anxiety, and kind of ruminating thoughts.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tell us some more.
So for those of you that, ruminating thoughts, when we think of ruminating thoughts, a lot of that means, people get stuck in these negative ideas, whether it be about themselves or, let's say, an event in your life has happened, an embarrassing moment, and you can't get it out of your head. You're just ruminating over it. It's in your head. It's a negative thought going over and over and over. They've recommended that, if you go for a walk, go for a hike in some kind of like a natural environment, so where there's trees and just nature, and you surround yourself with nature, it can help decrease those ruminating thoughts, and it can help improve mood. It can help decrease anxiety, and overall, it's just good for you.
Now, by nature, we mean old architect buildings that are beat down and worn down, right?
Well, interestingly, with this study, so what Stanford did was they had two different groups of people. One group of people was more in a natural kind of setting, a wooded area, and these two groups, they went for 90-minute walks. The second group then walked kind of along a highway in more of an urban setting. Upon returning from the walks, they found that the brain functioning in those that were in the more natural area with the trees and the wooded area actually had improved more so than those that were in the urban area. So I think there's something to be said about, when you go outside and you surround yourself kind of just with that peaceful environment. I know even just last night, for myself, I went fishing out. My in-laws have a pond, and it was just very peaceful and quiet. And so we don't really, I think in the everyday life, we don't really get to experience that.
This is really interesting to me because here in Fairfield we talk a lot about Ayurveda, basically Indian medicine, and a good portion of Ayurveda is soothing the senses, is restoring the senses so that we can metabolize experience into bliss. I feel like I live like a king. I'm on the second floor here in Fairfield in an apartment, huge windows, lots of sunlight, and every morning I have the beautiful east sun coming in, and I have beautiful trees outside, and I see birds outside of my window every morning, and I just feel really connected to the outside, and it's really soothing to just my heart and my mind.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think even, for me, like during the workday, I love to go, I just take a little walk. There's like a little forest area with a couple bridges, and it really is, it's nice. You almost feel like you're, it sounds weird to say, but like you're not in the Iowa anymore or wherever it is. And Iowa does have a lot of just beautiful places that I think sometimes we don't realize, or when you think of Iowa, a lot of times you just think of farmland and corn, but there are really some beautiful trails and things to see here.
But this is really true of everywhere. I mean, I'm a Chicago guy, and it's so easy to get lost in the urban architecture and the urban structure and lose your sense of self, and people become hardened. And It's like, how do I reground myself? How do I make use of the environment so that I can grow? So it's not just there's an environment, or even taking it one stage further, every hour you should really be taking a break and be connecting back to the environment, connecting back to your body, and reconnecting to who you are and what you're wanting to create. So back to your purpose and mission, to whatever that, if you're studying or working or whatever it is. Yes, it's good for your eyes, that you're not hyper-focusing on a computer and driving yourself crazy. But it's also good for your brain and your body, because sitting too long is really one of the worst things you could do. Even if you're getting exercise every single day, if you sat for 8 hours straight, you're causing so much damage to your body. Mm-hmm. And so it's coming back to this notion of how do we integrate mind, body, spirit, emotions, the world around us, the world inside us, to make a bigger difference in this world, so we can make a bigger difference for ourselves.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things too, I was reading in one of these, it was another article that tied in to the study that was done. One of the quotes in there, it said, "Urbanization is increasing at an unprecedented rate, and we're also seeing an uptick in the rates of anxiety disorders and depression in cities." So they want to figure out how do we bring nature? It's almost like, okay, so for those people who live in like a more urban area or in a city, finding and taking that time to go find that nature. And it's, the quote in here was, we want to figure out how do we bring more nature to people, which is huge, because it does go to show that it really does have just such a positive impact on people's mental health.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know a couple with 2 kids. They live in New York, and they're very spiritual people. But I don't know if they have this concept, this idea. Their children are obviously really stimulated, and I don't know what they're eating and such. But there's a lot of just a lot of what I consider to be unsettlement. and they live in an apartment, and they spend the mom with the 2 kids spends a lot of their time each day in this apartment, and there's barely any natural sun coming in. The apartment's sort of small and narrowy, and like I spent a couple hours in there, and I felt sort of, a little depressed after. And depression doesn't need to come from this really intellectual thing. Depression doesn't need to come from genetics. It doesn't need to come from this issue that you had with your mom when you were younger. It could just be where you're, it could have to do with the influence of your environment and where you're living too.
Well, in your relationship to that environment, which, so one thing I'm going to talk about and bore everybody with for a couple minutes is talking about some theoretical stuff.
Theoretical time with Scott Terry.
All right. So, the theory part, so one of my little aspects of my larger theoretical work is dealing with the notion of integration. So the way we deal with integration, and it's often talked about medicine, integrating physical health, so what's happening if you're going to the hospital, with mental health or spiritual health or other kinds of dimension, or making sure one department actually just talks to another department, or the nurse actually talks to the doctor and makes sure that the medicines that they're telling them to give is the right one, and they weren't over fatigued and did an extra 0 or a dot in the wrong place, because that's actually one of the most common ways people are dying in this country is through mistakes. And the reason people are having mistakes at a hospital or wherever is, again, they're losing touch with their body and connection of what they're wanting to create.
And they're not sleeping.
All right. So the other part of this is, so in terms of theory, though, of psychology or counseling, we're really talking about different aspects. So some people talk about cognitive work or behavioral work or emotional work or even existential work or transpersonal or spiritual work. There's many different dimensions, but how do they actually all work together? And when you're working with a therapist or within your own self to keep growing, you want to always think about integration. How am I combining all these different ways? Maybe I need to be more physical and not so much more intellectual way of solving my problem. Or maybe I need to combine the different worlds. All right. I could also look at relational scale, like in a relational scale. How am I relating to this family, this sense of internal parts to me? How am I relating to myself? How am I relating to an other? Or others, or to my family or sub-societal world that I live in, the community that I'm part of. I just heard a fantastic article today regarding how people who have been traumatized through soldiers, or somebody was talking about Sarajevo, and what happened over there and the destruction of that great European city.
Right.
Through the war. And in a sense, they were saying we also felt more alive when there was that trauma, when there was a communal trauma. Right. And in a sense, in Israel, there's a more sense of communal trauma, but there's also more sense of communal togetherness at times in different areas.
Right.
And soldiers, one of the biggest areas, is not the trauma that they're experiencing over there, so to speak, wherever there is, Iraq or Afghanistan. But when they come back, and how do they reintegrate into a different community and a different set of rules where there's not that great stimulation, there's not that camaraderie of who we are together,
right?
And what can we create together? Another way to look at environment. But also, how are we relating to our environment? And the environment isn't just nature. So I'm going to expand beyond your concept of nature into the notion of environment being whatever is around us. And what is our relationship to the world around us, whatever that is. How are we integrating with that world and doing something more with that?
That's very interesting, Scott. One thing that I was thinking was, what is it? What do we need? So when we're feeling lonely and we have no community, how can we connect to ourselves? Do we need another person? And is another person always there? No, another person's not always there. Sometimes you can't get a hold of your friend if you're having an OCD or an anxiety issue, and you're just like, oh, I just need my boyfriend or girlfriend or my friend right now, and no one's picking up or anything, and no one's there for me right now. You know, you ever experienced that? I experienced that in high school all the time.
I still do.
Yeah, and so now it's more of, okay, no one's around. I'm going to connect to myself, or I can connect to myself through nature, because how we connect to ourselves is you go in through one of the senses. You know, in TM we go in through the sense of hearing, and if you're in nature, you can go through the sense of smell or sight. You're just looking at there's a wonderful Buddhist meditation where you're looking at a tree, and you look at the tree, and then you notice a leaf, and then you look at the leaf, and you notice more details, and you're noticing more details, but you're not focusing. You're just
innocently being with it. By the way, you're listening to KRU 100.1 in your FM dial. You're listening to Mental Health Matters with Dr. Scott Terry. Today we're talking about the environment and our relationship to the environment, and how to get to that next stage where we can allow ourselves to grow to that next point of healthiness with the world around us, as well as the world inside us. So continue, Kyle.
Back to what I was saying.
It's a beautiful meditation, because it's that innocent connection to the world around us, through nature.
Right.
But I'm saying we could also do that in an office. I'm saying right now we're in a studio recording this, and I could connect to this beautiful poster, and it reminds me of this great movie. So there's a poster of Muscle Shores, which is a really cool movie. And then there's a poster of Mick Jagger. And then there's one of Miles Davis and Elvis Presley and Jimi Hendrix. We are at a music studio. And there's a number of these. And there's a number of these great posters here. And but it's also, I'm connecting to my own skin. I'm connecting to Kyle. I'm connecting to Danielle on the phone here. I'm connecting to what I'm choosing, because it's my choice to allow that innocent flow to go out and come back again like a wave.
Right.
But it's also, it's a really interesting concept, because we also have to get back to what's the notion of what is our reference point.
Right.
So it's a conversation I have with people a lot in terms of what is the reference point? Is it inside themselves? Is it outside themselves? And are we lost in our reference points? Mm-hmm. In a relationship, we get lost in the other and what the other is doing to us. And many people get lost in, my other is doing this to me. And they lose themselves in what they are choosing to create. They created that other to be there. They created that other to have that meaning for them. They created that other to have that power over them that they are now perceiving and projecting back onto them. And it's the same with the environment. That other could be the world around us that we could be oblivious to. So it's not just being in nature, it's connecting to that nature. Just like we connect to the world and the people around us.
Right. Our attention is only so big. We have, bandwidth in our brains. Bandwidth is a computer terminology, and you only have so much attention. You can only put your attention on so much at a time, and there's so much stimulation. I forget how many bits of information there are and how much we actually take in, but it's a minuscule. There's like an infinite amount of information. There's a very minuscule amount that we can take in at one time. And I remember I was sitting down in a food court yesterday at MUM, the school in town, and I noticed that no one was there yet. I was waiting for some of my friends to show up, and I had my food, and I was really happy that there was they had my favorite dish that they have at the Annapurna. It was paneer and green beans and just delicious food, and I was so happy. And then I got to the table, and I started eating a little bit, and then I got so sad because no one was there yet, and I felt really lonely. And then I put my attention back on the food, and I was so happy because it's my favorite dish, and I'm enjoying it. And then my attention went back to no one was there, and then I got so sad again, and then I, you realize that it's not always the case, but a lot of the time we have the option to be happy or sad based on where we put our attention. Does it make a difference if I put my attention on my food or the fact that there's no one sitting with me at that time? It makes absolutely no difference other than one makes me feel a little happy and one makes me feel a little sad. And so it's, why not just be with my food, you know?
Or say, you know what, I am desiring connection.
Right.
And be with that notion. And do I need to go with that? Mm-hmm. Is that real? Is that meaningful? And if that's so, can I not have connection with myself? Can I not connection to my food? Can I have not connection to somebody who's a stranger and take a risk? Mm-hmm. Because maybe there's somebody else in there, right. And I don't care if they're the person working in the kitchen. Maybe if I'm desiring connection of an other, that I create that. Mm-hmm. I am not a victim of anyone, only of myself. And I don't choose to be a victim of myself anymore.
Right.
I'm here to empower myself to create the world that works for me every single day. So we keep coming back to, what is it you want to create for you? How do I do that today? When you're talking about this article, finding that avenue where people are connecting to the environment and it's making them saner and happier and healthier, what else do you think for yourself?
I mean, I think, it's interesting, Scott, as you were kind of talking about even like that little room you guys are sitting in, with the posters. I have actually found myself when I'm in there, because I don't like, for me personally, like I don't like, it's not that I'm claustrophobic, but I don't like the feeling of being trapped. So that's a very small room, no windows. You get a lot of people in there, and it gets really cramped.
Right.
And so what I have actually found myself doing when I'm in that room is, looking at the posters, and it does, in a sense, like when you start to take the time to really notice your environment, you can almost just find the beauty in the smallest things. One of my favorite things to do is I have like a 30-minute drive home from work every day. I get to drive into, on the days when it's sunny, I drive to work into the sunrise and home from work into the sunset. And so it's for me, it's not about, like, I'm not externalizing, I'm not, like, looking outside of myself for happiness. For me, it's more trying to just acknowledge the beauty that's around me and in the world so that I can connect with it, and then in turn be more connected with myself.
Right.
I have to say, that really strikes me so profoundly, because I had a really bad accident, and by the way, it's my 10-year anniversary of almost dying.
Congratulations!
Weird thing to say. Congratulations for not dying. So I had a mountain biking accident, and I can tell everybody about that because it's a really useful thing. Because it's not about the accident or what the trauma is. Trauma is never about what happened; it's what we do with what happened to ourselves. And so, what I did to myself afterwards is, I couldn't drive for a year. And so one of the things I did is I took a job being a professor downtown Chicago, and I had to do a 14-mile bike ride each way along the beautiful Chicago lakefront, which is an amazing bike ride, especially when there's not a lot of people there, and especially in winter when there's nobody there, and the road on the bike trail was plowed before the Lakeshore Drive highway was plowed, and it was a way for me to heal, to connect back to being in my body, and to wake up looking at the sunrise over Lake Michigan and the water crashing over the piers, and and it's like, how do we all come back to ourselves again and grow?
And right. I think it's important too to point out, like I said, or like we were kind of talking about earlier, there's beauty everywhere, no matter where you live. It's kind of just about taking the time to really notice it. and connect with it. And it doesn't have to be, for long, drawn-out periods of time, but really just connecting with it. And I really think that's why, if you spend some time out in nature or out for walks or wherever it is, you'll be able to find that connection and start to connect more with yourself. And what I think is even more interesting, Scott, about your story is you could have easily said, like, well, I'm never getting on a bike again.
Yeah, after a mountain biking accident, yeah, exactly.
But you didn't, and you still found...
Well, no, I used the very implement that was a point of destruction to be a point of success and power for myself. So I re-empowered myself through the very instrument. Yes, I wasn't going down a hill anymore, and Chicago is as flat as could be. But yeah, I mean, and I used the tools that I then chose to empower.
Right.
Yeah. So sorry to cut you off there.
No. It's perfectly said.
So it's really interesting, like how we allow that to manifest and to just keep coming back to that. And I love how you said that. And it's like harks back to Kyle's example of the Buddhist exercise of noticing the tree and then noticing the leaf and then noticing the point of the leaf and like going into more and more of a innocent focus of noticing my world around me and then connecting to that, and maybe feeling that leaf and maybe smelling that leaf or maybe just sitting there and just being present. But I could also do that. Again, we're in a studio right now, and I'm looking at lights flashing as I'm looking at some meter here, which I'm sure I'm not doing correctly. And I could the lights themselves I could find beautiful. It's as industrial as you could be. But the notion is that it doesn't. Environment is the world that I create around me, with people and nature and.
Now, what about I'm looking at fluorescent lighting. I'm here in the room, and it literally makes me feel a little more sad and overstimulating because there's all this fluorescent lighting.
So that part is absolutely true. We are biology beings, right? We're animals. And this artificial world that we've encompassed now and are encompassed by certainly does impinge us, right?
Right.
So what do you do because both aspects are true. I could still find beauty in this artificial closed environment, but it could still be bumming me out because it's, influencing me. So what do you do? What do you think?
Take breaks.
I think it's important to not get lost in it. We talk about earlier when I brought up kind of those ruminating thoughts. Don't get stuck in the ruminating thoughts. It's about kind of acknowledging, well, yeah, okay, this might be overstimulating for me. These lights, oh God, they're giving me a headache. It's really bumming me out. Okay, so what can I do with that, I guess, would be the question. Like, what can I do with this so that it doesn't consume me and that I can still remain connected to myself while also being connected to the world outside of myself?
Absolutely. And getting that, again, that it's your choice. You create that environment, and then and it's just having that great awareness, like, hey, it's bothering you, Kyle, take a break. You know what? Right. You are not trapped. Nobody's got handcuffs on you. Right. Take a break, come back to the world around you, and then come back to the world that who you need to be.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Great show as usual. And you are listening to Mental Health Matters with Dr. Scott Terry, KRUU 100.1. Do check out some of the old shows. We got some great ones that we've been really doing lately, which I've just been loving. And thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.